Hello and welcome to the 20th and the final episode of the Practical PM, your friend, philosopher, and guide to product management. In this episode, I would emphasize the cross functional, holistic role product managers have to play and specifically discuss one skill that is very important to do this job well, that of documentation. While there are pithy descriptions floating around about the job of a product manager, like being the CEO of the product or owner of the product, the honest fact is that when somebody asks me what the job is like, I struggle to come up with such pithy answers. Invariably, I start with the very unhelpful disclaimer that product management is one of the most ill-defined roles in the industry. It can mean different things depending on the industry, company, and sometimes even the team you are working in. But overall, the job involves defining the problems correctly for all the stakeholders, figuring out the solution along with relevant stakeholders and aligning them, delivering the solution, and measuring the success of the solution, which then leads to the next problem definition. All through, you need to use different skills of your own, but also more importantly of your team members as well as those of experts outside your team. The job involves bringing together a lot of different kinds of people, and hence I emphasize a lot on the role of documentation in doing the job well. First of all, writing things down is essential to clarifying your own thoughts. Before you bring other people in, not having clarity on your own ideas or not knowing the questions that you want others to answer is almost criminal, because you will be wasting a lot of time for a lot of people if they have to make up for your lack of clarity. Then, writing things down is also essential to ensuring that all the stakeholders are on the same page, and also to communicating the requirements very, very clearly to all the different team members who have to come together to do the implementation. One of the most important documents is a product requirement document or a PRD. It may be known by different names in your organization, maybe a product proposal, a product plan, or a product brief. Some organizations who follow agile methodologies tend to replace a PRD with stories and tickets. That, I believe, is not a good idea. PRD as a document caters to a lot of different stakeholders, not just the people who will work on the tickets. It also is a document that has to be written for many different kinds of products, each of which have different documentation requirements. Hence, a PRD must be written irrespective of what development methodologies are followed in your organization and what other kinds of documents you may need to create for that. Like I mentioned, the PRD may need to be written for many different kinds of products, and it caters to many different kinds of stakeholders. So while in the rest of the episode I will give some guidelines on how to write a PRD, it is better if you focus on the primary purpose of the PRD, that is communication, and not get too lost in exact format requirements. Tailor it according to whatever works for you, your team, and your organization. I typically start a PRD with a clear, crisp objective. Objective states what the project is supposed to do in plain, simple English. Of course, I am assuming that English is your language of communication. A good way of writing an objective is in the form of achieve X through Y. For example, increase revenue by enabling the sale of a new product on our e-commerce platform, or reduce the number of AWS machines being used by optimizing our search infrastructure setup, or increase the trust in marketplace by letting the users review products publicly. Next comes metrics. Note that I have kept metrics separate from objective, and that is deliberate. Metrics are a measure of whether we did what we set out to do and to what extent. Metrics are not what we set out to do in the first place. In some cases, objective to metric mapping might be obvious. For example, if increasing revenue is the objective, then revenue is obviously a metric. In other cases, it may not be so obvious. For example, if you are introducing public reviews for building a trust mechanism, it is unlikely that you will be able to measure trust differential easily or immediately. You will have to think of some kind of engagement metric to judge the success of that product. There are three types of metric you may want to track. One is output metric, second is input metric, and third is check metric. Let us understand them one by one. First in the list is output metric. This is one of the simplest to understand because output metrics are the ultimate business outcomes you are looking at. For example, sales, revenue, profits, retention, customer acquisition cost, number of customers, etc. In some cases, the impact of a product on output metric may be difficult to measure or it may not be measurable immediately. An example is the review feature that we talked about earlier. Trust as an output will be almost impossible to measure, especially immediately after launch. Trust will, however, definitely build over time if the feature has worked. And in long term, the trust will also lead to better output metric like better retention of customers, lower customer acquisition costs, and hence more revenues and more profit. However, you cannot wait forever to find out whether a product you launched has been successful or not. Anyway, in long term, the exact attribution of that success to a particular feature will be difficult to do. So in such cases, you would want to use an input metric to measure the success of the product or the feature you have launched. And input metric in case of reviews feature can be the number of reviews written or number of views on those reviews. Such input metrics are called engagement metrics. However, you cannot wait forever to find out whether a product or a feature you have launched now has been successful or not. Anyway, in long term, attributing the exact amount of success to this feature will be difficult. So, in such cases, you would want to measure the success of your product with an input metric and not have output metric in your PRD at all. Input metric for a review feature can be things like number of reviews written and number of views on those reviews. These kind of input metrics are called engagement metrics. In some cases, you may very well have a well-defined output metric, but it will take some time to show, not forever, but still some time. And you may have an input metric which is a known leading metric which will show up early. A leading metric is a metric that is a good predictor of an output metric. In such cases, you should mention both input and output metrics in your PRD and you should also observe them both. Let's take an example. Suppose you have a freemium product where people first sign up for the free version of the product and then 90 days down the line they convert to a paid product because for the first 90 days the free product works for them, it is fully functional. And also suppose that you have a stable funnel between number of people signing up for the free version and number of people who finally convert to the paid product. So in this case, if you have launched a product or a feature that will improve your number of paid customers, but it will do it by actually getting more people to sign up for free version, then even though 90 days down the line you will be able to measure and monitor your output metric of higher revenue, you would want to measure the input metric of the number of free product subscribers immediately after the launch as well, because it is a good predictor of what is going to happen with the paid conversion, so that you would know much early whether your product is succeeding or not. So leading metric are another kind of input metric that you may want to use depending on the product or the feature in question. Another case where you may want to track both output and input metric is when you want to confirm that the change in output metric is a logical result of the initiative you took. For example, if you were releasing a feature which was expected to increase revenue from particular kinds of product by increasing the number of views on the details page of those products, then apart from measuring the increase in revenue, you would also want to measure the input metric of number of page views on those product pages. This will confirm that the feature worked as you intended, and if it did not, then you would have a new problem to solve in the next iteration. So depending on your product, you may want to measure only output metric or only input metric or both. Now the final kind of metric you need to be cognizant of, that is check metric. A check metric is a metric that can get impacted by your launch even though it is not the target metric. In such cases, you would want to keep an eye on these check metrics to ensure that they have not deteriorated or they have deteriorated within the acceptable degree. For example, suppose yours is an e-commerce platform and you decided to introduce customization options in some of the products you are selling through it. So then your output metric will be overall revenue. Your input metric may be the adoption of these customization options, but you should also have a check metric in the form of your checkout funnel conversion. It shouldn't happen that the customization options have started confusing some people, and hence you are seeing a higher rate of cart abandonment. So what we have learned till now is that PRD should have a clear, crisp objective. Then it should have a metrics section which clearly lists out the output, input and check metrics whichever are applicable to your product or feature. Then there should be one or more sections providing the background to the product. What was the source of the idea? What was the decision-making process? What were the alternatives considered? Are there other projects and products which are related to this or which can get affected by this? If so, which are those and how are they related? What is the evidence in terms of data, research, analysis, user feedback, product data, etc., that this is the right project to pick up and so on. After reading these sections, any stakeholder should be very clear about the decision-making process behind this product. Then you come to the solution, which can again have multiple sections and subsections in it. This is where you describe in detail what the solution is, the features of the product. At this stage, do not try to replace detailed writing with a diagram or flowchart or wireframe or even complete screen designs. By all means, use the flowcharts, use the diagrams, use the wireframes, use the screen designs if they help you explain the solution. But these are not replacement for very clear and detailed articulation of what is it that you expect to be implemented. This is the section that design, tech, analytics and QA teams should be able to use to figure out their own individual tasks. If business and operations or customer support or any other teams are also involved in the implementation or final rollout of the product, then they should also find the information relevant to them here. Optionally, you may also want to include separate sections for design requirements, tech considerations, analytics requirements, etc. for the different teams involved in implementation. Include these sections if you think that these one or more of these teams need to be aware of some very specific constraints that they should be working under, or some very specific future proofing requirements that they need to be aware of, or if there are some very specific problems in the overall context that they need to be focusing on. For example, these sections may have content like this, that currently we are introducing only 2 specific customizations, but if these are successful, then we are likely to introduce more in the future. So it would be good if the design is scalable and tech architecture flexible to allow those introductions easily in future, but only if it does not significantly increase the complexity of implementation for the current product. When such things are so clearly specified, they may lead to further discussions with tech or design team. For example, there may be a whole lot of discussion on how much complexity is too much complexity. But it is important to specify those so that those discussions do happen and the right decisions are taken for the product and the company. Once those decisions are taken, the PRD should be updated with those decisions and their rationale. Then we can take a couple of examples of the cases where these sections will be required because you want a specific team to solve some very specific problem. For example, for the tech team, this feature requires a lot of data processing. However, it is very important that it should be instantaneous, in which case the tech team will need to put in extra effort in all kinds of optimization, caching, etc. that they need to do. Another example, that this feature is very complicated, so design team needs to pay extra attention to how to make it user friendly, and that again focuses their efforts in the right direction. When the designs are ready, the link should be included in the PRD. If there are specific screens in the design where the expected behavior needs to be clearly explained to the developers, then it should be done in the PRD itself. When the tech documents are ready, they should similarly be linked from the PRD for easy access later on. PRD is best treated as a live document which is constantly updated as the project progresses. Other members of the team can and should contribute to the specific sections in the PRD. There are many other kinds of documents, presentations, research reports, dashboards, etc. that you may end up producing or consuming as a product manager. So read up on the best principles of communication and also absorb specific practices that work well in your organization, and then put both of them to deliberate good use to get your point across. Here I will end this episode as well as this series, but don't leave any of our channels or groups you are subscribed to. More stuff is coming your way about product management. There is a lot of scope to learn and grow together. So all the best and see you soon with some more exciting stuff. Thank you.